So our next and final presentation of the networking session today is the People at Work project. And I have Paul Kilby here from the advisory service WorkSafe Tasmania to introduce People at Work. Thank you.
We're just going to leave that backdrop up. Backdrop up because I'm not doing anything.
All right.
Yep. Okay. Hi everybody. Thanks for coming along today. I'm here to talk about the People at Work program. So the overall aim of the People at Work research project is to assist employees in identifying psychosocial hazards and factors and implement a psychosocial risk management process into their workplace. An outcome of the project was the development and the validation of the People at Work survey tool, which my counterpart in Queensland, hopefully we're all connected up, is going to talk about shortly. The project also resulted in the creation of a set of Australian benchmarks showing the prevalence of psychosocial hazards across states and territories, sectors, industries and occupations. Following the completion of the research project, the participating jurisdictions worked collaboratively, I've been practicing that word all day and I've nailed it, to translate the People at Work process to the self-administered set of resources. In 2020, this calibration led to the development of a digital version of People at Work that is now freely available to all Australian workplaces. And can I just note on that, from the information we've been given, that it's been getting hit from all around the globe, which is really exciting for the group involved. The particular program is a true national program with all states and territories and from Australia being funding members, and I'd like to thank the Work Cover Board for Tasmania's contribution. People at Work is a platform to help create mentally healthy workplaces. Now more than ever, we need to be aware of our own mental health and to look out and to look out for signs of distress amongst those that we work with. Workplaces have a duty to protect the psychological health of the workers in the same way they protect their physical safety. As an employer, you can send a clear message to your workers that you value their mental health and well-being. You can also reap the benefits of reduced workers' compensation claims, improved worker productivity, satisfaction and engagement. Poor psychological safety costs Australian businesses $6 billion each year in lost productivity. This is because the work-related mental health conditions, such as stress, typically require 3 times more time off work for the injury. Mental health injuries can be caused by excessive time pressures, unreasonable deadlines, poorly managed organisational change and support, conflict between people, harassment and bullying, and exposure to occupational violence and aggression. In Tasmania, in 2020, there were 669 work-related mental health condition claims. 50% of these were work-related mental stress, while the work-related harassment and bullying accounted for 36% of serious mental health claims. Each mental health injury claim results in an average incapacity of over 75 days absence from work. And the average cost of mental health injury claim is $47,500. If you are a person conducting a business or undertaking, you have a duty to ensure the health and safety of your workers, and this includes their mental health and safety. You can prevent work contributing to workers becoming ill by taking proactive action and intervening early. Just as you do with physical hazards, you should identify what could cause mental harm in your workplace and assess how severe the risks are, and take steps to eliminate and control those risks. The hazards measured by People at Work survey are based on decades of research highlighting the factors that influence the worker's psychological health and safety. These psychosocial hazards are also based on guidance from Safe Work Australia. Once your group has undertaken the survey, the results will prompt you to online tools that will help you reduce and/or eliminate your risks. Workplaces told us that they needed more support and practical tools to manage the risks in psychological health. Many struggle to do a risk assessment on the psychosocial risks. The People at Work platform aims to help create psychologically health and safety workplaces by providing free tools and resources for this purpose. Because every workplace is unique, sadly, a risk management process is required to identify psychosocial hazards, assess risks and implement strategies to control these individual risks. The risk management approach aligns with Safe Work Australia's Code of Practice on how to manage work health and safety risks. So please take time to have a look at the People at Work website, peopleatwork.gov.au. This link is also available on the WorkSafe Tasmania website. For not only the survey, but the tools required for you to make your business a mentally safer workplace. I would now like to throw to Natalie Dunton, a Chief Advisor from the Psychological Health Team, Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, who is going to tell us a bit more about the People at Work survey tool. Thanks, Natalie.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Is that thumbs up? Okay. Hi everybody. Look, thanks for having us. Thanks, Paul. That's given quite a comprehensive overview. So what I thought I'd do is probably just go through the PowerPoint, if I can organise to get that up for you in a moment and share that. Just to sort of go through and probably reiterate a little bit about People at Work, the tool, and then I'm sure that there'll be a little bit of time by the looks to have a few questions as well for you. So I'm just going to try and share this now, so bear with me. Okay, can everybody see this? Okay, all right, so, whoops, okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, Natalie.
Thumbs up, okay. All right, so the reason that probably right in the beginning, when Paul was talking about really this is about having a bit of a preventative approach, and I think to introduce the tool or to provide it in a bit of context, it's always good to think about what we're trying to achieve really is that mentally healthy workplaces, which I've heard a lot of you talk about this afternoon. And this is actually trying to go a bit more upstream and actually, you know, really look at some of that prevention and what's the snapshot, what's happening in the workplace rather than waiting for psychological injury to happen. So we can actually get in earlier. So that's probably in a really, really short span. What the aim of People at Work is to actually provide that snapshot of some of those factors that we know are actually related to that. So there's part of the business case, which I know Paul has just gone through as well. I will talk a little bit about what it is and then some of the benefits, which again, you know, Paul's been able to really highlight, I think, some of those particular things. But I think a really good and interesting statistic for us to have a look at is, you know, that 91%, this is a survey done by back around 2015, I think, by Beyond Blue, and they found that 91% of employees actually felt that mentally healthy workplaces were important to them. But interestingly, only 52%, so only half of them actually believed that their workplace was healthy. So these were some of the reasons behind why we needed to look at, you know, how do we actually start to look at what's going to prevent some of the psychological injury and create those mentally healthy workplaces. You know, and some other stats around just 50% of employees have left a workplace due to poor mental health environment. And I'm sure that, I know I can't see your faces there as well, but, you know, I'm sure that all of you can think of a place that you thought, I've just got to go, I can't stay in this environment anymore. That was just very toxic, or, you know, your own mental health was actually suffering through the work-related stress involved. So we know that a lot of people leave the workplace prior to, which for businesses, you know, that means that they're having to retrain, they're having to actually have that productivity goes down. But, you know, even more so, the person who leaves sometimes isn't very well. And so for them to pick up work again, it actually just starts to be detrimental for the individual as well. The other thing is that 60% of employees working in a mentally healthy workplace, so over half, actually much more committed to their job. So, you know, that again is really good data around the fact that if you do create these workplaces, you know, and in a way, I suppose you build it and they will come because people will want to work for those places that actually do think about how to provide those particular factors in a positive way. So the other thing that I suppose since COVID last year, you know, and I know a lot of people today presenting have talked about the impacts of COVID. We have seen a big increase from 20 to 30% of mental health concerns, and we do expect or anticipate that will continue increasing. So it's probably become even more so looking at some of these preventative factors for these workplaces. And I think Paul already mentioned, you know, the $6 billion, but, you know, every dollar that you spend, there's quite a bit of research, but some of the latest research around, you know, for every dollar, it might be about $9 return. So quite often it's a cost factor for businesses, you know, how do you spend all this money? But in lots of ways, you are getting it in return. So what is People at Work? It is actually it's the only Australian validated and evidence-based psychosocial tool with benchmarking. So it's actually got some industry benchmarks that sit alongside of it. And as well, some of the, which I'll show you as well, but some of the tool itself, there's actually across these 5 steps, there's actually tools and resources, a whole suite within each of those steps, so that to help you right from the beginning to prepare the workplace in business cases, and right through to how to conduct the survey, understand the results, you know, what are the focus groups you might need to run, how are you going to find out more of that information, and then reviewing and improving each time. So you're really following a really nice comprehensive risk management model, but we're actually looking upstream instead of saying, oh, good, you know, everybody's off on psychological injury, so that's why we're starting this. You're actually going upstream, saying, what are some of the factors? What's our snapshot of our organisation? Are there any indicators for us in a particular area? Which I think, you know, one of the other tools today talked about being able to sort of drill into a particular factor and being able to actually provide extra information or extra support around that. It was actually, just to give you a little bit of background, I mean, since 2007, you know, there'd been a university, you know, collaboration. And as Paul was saying, you know, it's been a long time actually trying to get this tool up with a particular platform, with this platform, to be able to have these online tools and to be able to actually have these reports. And I'll show you a little snapshot of what those reports look like as well. And this has meant that people can sort of be, you know, it's a lot less manual. There is still a manual-based People at Work, which you can get off the website, like off our website in Queensland. But for most people that did use those, it was a little bit time-consuming for them. They had to, you know, translate it to SurveyMonkey or onto spreadsheets. So this just provides a little bit more streamlined approach, which sometimes can mean the difference between people using it or not. And it does, as I mentioned, it follows that identify, assess, control, you know, the risks to psychological health. So it does follow a really nice risk management model from a safety perspective. So it helps to meet some of those obligations that we have around like mentally healthy workplaces, physical and psychological. It's suitable for businesses with more than 20, and a lot of times that's because we really don't want to identify workers individually. So with 20, the statistics can be, you know, analysed behind the scenes, and that way too, it just means that it's more anonymous for people, and nobody can identify, particularly an organisation can't say, oh, that person at that particular area did that answer. So it is really just to protect and anonymise that data. And with each of these steps, as you can see, and like I said, there's that digital platform, which I'll give you the People at Work. I'll provide that for you anyway, and I think Paul has it there too, but consisting of all the resources and interactive learning modules as well. So you can actually go in and it will actually, there'll be videos on how to do it. There's also downloadable forms. There's business cases for you to be able to have a look at and what you might be able to go into your workplaces and utilise. And all of this is free. So this can be downloaded for free, because the idea is to really try to encourage people to utilise these tools, to actually start to look at, we don't want people to have psychological injury or workplaces actually contributing to some of this, some of the particular injuries, workplace injuries people are having, and not be able to go upstream, as I said. So this is why we really just want this tool to be used and people to start to also refine it, because for any tool, you really need to be able to review and improve it. And, ideally, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but, the next phases of this, we're really looking at some of those areas that it might not cover at this point. So this is probably just an overview slide, really, which I think Paul's really spoken to, and I've said it already. But yeah, you can get your paper-based tools. The overall aim was to develop a validated tool. So because this is validated against the particular areas, it just makes it sort of one of those first national projects that's been able to be validated as well. And the solution is digital, so it can be used on different formats. So it's adaptable in that sense. So you can use it on your phone, on your PC. And it means that with the online resources and things like that, you can read them anywhere. You'll see on this slide, it gives you a little bit of a view of what the reports might look like. So you can see they're really just a snapshot for you. And one of the other parts on this slide also shows you what that website was. So with the little tiles, then you can see there that you go in to create your survey, or what's the process, and you can click into there. That is where you actually will find a lot of your online resources. So you're just clicking in to each area and you can watch those, and you can go in and out. So it doesn't make you follow all the way through either. So if you're just doing a refresher, you can sort of move on to the next resource. Industry benchmarking is the other really great thing that this collects. So this tool, you can actually go in and there's quite a number of industries there that have a benchmark already against some of these factors that we'll be looking at, and I'll talk about the factors in a moment. And really that's been a really great tool for people to have a look at, just to benchmark themselves. In saying that, I think sometimes we have to be careful that we don't want to benchmark ourselves in the sense that just because somebody has got a really low mark and we've beat them at that, or we've said, oh, gee, we're scoring a bit higher, we still want to look and say, well, are we scoring? Is it best practice? So we do need to make sure that we're monitoring this particular tool to see, well, what should we be scoring? What does that mean for us in our industry? So this is just a very quick overview, really, of some of the particular factors that are looked at, but it's more around the work-related stress model. A lot of the actual tool is based upon the job demands and resources model. And what we know is that with the job demands, if they're low or high, we know that support can buffer some of that. But these are some of the main factors. So remote and isolated work and low role clarity, poor organisational justice. And these are what the questions are based around, is all of these types of demands and what we call resources, which might be additional support or really good recognition and reward. And we know if they're in the high level for some of those things, those supports actually help to buffer what might be really high work demands. So if all of you can think of perhaps where you might have been working really hard, but you've had great support and a really good team, that makes a huge difference. So that's how that applies. So that those all contribute to work-related stress, whether that's high or not. And also then we look at outcomes. So some of the outcomes we know from a particularly a work-related an environment that has work-related stress, or individuals within that environment are really highly stressed. We know that psychological injury and illness start to occur there. We have physical illnesses, which, we also know musculoskeletal disorders, there is actually quite a correlation between them and psychological injury. And poor health behaviours. So, this is, for example, when you think I know I've got to go home and I've got to cook some really good kale and I have to have a nice smoothie and I need to not drink alcohol. But when you've had a really hard day, the first thing you do is you lay on the couch, you grab the Netflix and you grab the wine, and all of those health behaviours continue. So it's a longer term thing. You don't see these things happening overnight, and that's why sometimes they're not visible. It's often called the invisible type of factor that sits there, the work-related stress. But I think we can all relate to when we've just you get home and it's just so fatiguing due to whatever has happened at work that day. So in your own, I suppose this is about really thinking about what hazards you think are most prevalent in your organisation. And because of that, what has been integrated into this People at Work measure is that you can sort of select and build it a little bit around this. So you can actually choose, so there's some really core modules, but then there's also some that you can actually choose. So you can go in and actually choose whether or not you'd like to look at some of the outcomes around sprain and strain and psychological health. But some of the others, if you have for example, the demographics can change. You can choose if you're a FIFO environment, if you're a drive-in, drive-out, if you have shift workers in your environment, you can actually go in and select those questions to also be part of this and take out other questions. But there'll be a set of core module questions as well, and obviously giving you a bit of a snapshot of where you're sitting across these factors. And as I said, some of those the ones in red that you can see, they're more outcomes. So it might show you that you maybe have sprain and strain might be an area for you that's in the red and it needs attention, or it might be that worker intention, so people are really intending on probably leaving soon, so you know that job satisfaction is quite low. So, and they're the outcomes for people. And under the psychological health, that generally is talking about psychological distress, but also burnout. And we know that, burnout's a little bit insipid. It sort of can happen very gradually over time, but it can be really quite devastating for people if they reach a burnout phase. So this is about trying to jump in early and see, is there an issue in here, and what's that look like for our people in our organisation and industry. And so this probably just gives you a bit of an overview of what the People at Work website looks like. So this is the tiles, and you click in and out of here with all your resources and the whole hub. And as I mentioned before, so there's a lot of resources that sit behind here. And also frequently asked questions. So I think that's an important one. So as people are asking questions, we're updating some of these. So you, if you're going to want to run this with your organisation or your teams, you can actually go in and see, well, what other questions did people ask? And they've been entered into here as well. And there'll be obviously iterations to this tool as things progress along over the 5 years. And a lot of that will be based on, what industry is saying that they would like to see as well. So, and I think this probably just provides you, so there's 2 reports that you can get from People at Work. So you can ask for an overview. So it just provides that sort of high level overview. So that's the one on the left of the screen. And so if you can see there, it does use the ranges. So a low, moderate, high, use a bit of a traffic light approach. So it's quite easy to read visually, and you're able to actually, jump in and say, across the bottom, it actually talks about, role overload or, relationship conflict and those sorts of things. So you can, really delve into, okay, they're the areas and they're the benchmarks. The black line is the benchmark that we have at the moment for those particular factors. So you can actually see a snapshot of where you might be sitting against another industry. Only you can choose the particular industry as you're going through. And also you'll notice the page behind, which actually just shows that bit of a matrix. That gives you, again, just an overall result of where you're sitting overall, but you really need to have a look to see the different factors. So in case there is one that's quite high, or maybe if it's in that yellow, it needs to be improved. From there, you really go on, as we talked about, to actually delve in a little bit more to that. So that might be through discussions and consultation, through focus groups. And that also helps to meet your consultation obligations as well, because you're really consulting with staff, and what might be something really prevalent here in Brisbane versus regional areas, it might be the same result but very different reasons. And so therefore different things need to be put in place. So it's actually just providing a really good information about what that looks like once you do that consultation. So that's a really important phase. So you can't just do the report and go, great, we've got the report. And the other thing that you would read with this report is any of your own objective data that you might have from your organisations as well. So if you've got reports that you've already done, surveys, if you've got, any sorts of, consultation that you've done, or even just absenteeism types of data and any of those more lagging data points, it's really good to read in conjunction with this to see how it sits as well. And the other report is really just a really big deep dive down into each of the factors. So it's a comprehensive one. And you'll see there, it says it's about 50 to 70 pages, because it actually is what we call a dynamic report. So it'll actually enter the data very specific to your organisation, and it will actually give you some suggestions that if job demands are high in your industry, what might be some of the control measures that you might be able to look at putting in place during that time. So that probably it's a very quick snapshot, I know, just to show you at this stage, but quite often you can go in and actually have a look at the reporting yourself as well when you're in there, and that provides you just a little bit more information. There's more online modules about the reporting as well, on how that all works. So, and again, this is just, you would have access to the benchmarks. So when you're actually going in, you have your sign on and you go and create your account. You actually can go in and check for the year, well, what's the benchmarks look like for my particular organisation. So at the moment, these will be the benchmarks here, and they will change as more and more people start to complete the tool. And we do suggest the tool's completed probably across 18 months. Mainly because that way this really is a monitoring tool, and a little bit like health surveillance, you're actually surveilling across time to see, well, is there a change in that, that particular factor, and what might that be because of, in our industry. So it's a really good tracking tool for you. I think Paul's probably covered most of the benefits, but just to give a quick overview as well, it really does, I think a really key part is that it provides, it helps workplaces really comply with a lot of the health and safety duties, including the consulting, which often is a part that can be difficult. But it's amazing when you do actually ask your workers what might be a good solution, how often they've actually got the solution at hand for how to fix something. And it's sometimes not a very expensive fix. So that consultation can, be really worth a lot to a business and how things run and the systems and processes behind that. And it does offer a really systematic way of looking at this, any of these sorts of factors as well, which is a big benefit. Because often we might look at things in isolation, but when you're actually looking at it quite systematically, you can actually often pick up where it's a system problem and it's not maybe a particular factor going on. And what we do know is that if you can pick these things up early, it definitely reduces some of these hazards like work-related bullying and violence. A lot of those things are related to some of the conflict that there is within teams, and that can be caused by the work-related stress. So we know that there's a lot of correlation that sits across a lot of these factors. And, that's a reduction, obviously, in the workers' comp claims and some of the psych injury, as well as just the fact that you've got better productivity and satisfaction and engagement with your staff. But as I've sort of said a few times, the aim is really to get these lead indicators into workplaces and all of our organisations, because having the lag factors is already too late. It's sort of like waiting for the fatality to happen, waiting for the injury. Instead of waiting for that, we're trying to say, what are the factors that might contribute to that, and therefore what can we do and put in place to prevent some of this from even occurring. So what we'd like to see is a reduction in those injuries, but what we'd really like to also see is an increase in the satisfaction, engagement, productivity as well for the businesses. So just as a quick summary, the website will guide you through every step. So when you're building your business case right through, and some organisations do pilot the survey in one section of an organisation before they run it across, just to sort of trial the process for them and see what works best, rather than trying to go out to the whole organisation. So that can be a really good way of just sort of starting that process. And I won't play this video. Oops, hang on, sorry. I won't play that, because that actually just heads in and just summarises what we've just said. But I can take some questions as well, and that's actually the People at Work website. So anybody can go into that and actually have a look. So thank you very much. I just thought I'll finish there so that then there is some time for questions if people would like to do that. I'm just going to stop. I'll leave that up actually so you can see that, or hang on, will I stop sharing? Hang on. I can send these to you anyway. So sorry, so I know that was very quick. I just thought it was getting on to 4:17. So
just a quick one. So it looks like a great tool. Is there a way for it to help in risk assessments for it to generate likelihoods for you in the way like that Professor Drew Dawson has those calculators for fatigue that you can base around like shift design does that implement a similar strategy with that you can actually get a likelihood out of it?
It's probably more of a snapshot as to where things are at. I think over time, if you were actually rolling that out over time, you might actually be able to start to develop some of those things. But I think right now it's actually about what are those core factors right now that are a snapshot in your organisation and where you might need to put some of your efforts into finding out what might be going on. That would be where that's at right now. But I mean, down the track, that would be ideal if you can start to actually really quantify some of those things. And the more information we get through the data and the benchmarking, that will start to allow for some of those things to happen.
Hi there. One of the early things that you covered off was the poor mental health survey that was covered, I think, by Deloitte. Was there a common language of what is a mentally unhealthy workplace? Because I think sometimes people will have a different understanding of what a mentally unhealthy workplace is.
Yeah, look, I think everybody seems to look at something slightly different. However, mostly they tend to look at those lag indicators. So for them, and occasionally they'll sometimes look at what might be some positive things happening. But mostly what I've seen is that they'll look at, well, if it's a mentally unhealthy workplace, then these are the factors that tend to be, which is, the high workers' compensation, less productivity, high absenteeism, which are all our lag data. So they will look at those sort of factors. And sometimes they've looked at some wellbeing promotional type, factors that people have in organisations. But in essence, quite often those things we tend to do promoting quite well in an organisation, but almost in isolation of a systematic process. It's can be wellbeing program that's quite isolated really from the core factors. So, for example, if an organisation has really high work demands and you've got high work-related stress, but we're offering yoga at lunchtime, most people won't be going to that because, one, they're too fatigued, and two, they're too busy. So we're offering something, but it's not really a great fit as well. So sometimes they will look at some of those. But you're right. I mean, I think we've used the Deloitte, and I think they have over time looked at more those, what are the lag factors? So to have those, we need to actually increase some of those more positive mental health. And they've looked at recovery too, on how we look at, recovery back to work and things like that as well. Any other questions? I've just gone into the dark. Hang on. I'm in a room that actually the lights go out if I don't move. So.
If there are no other questions about any of the presentations today. So thank you, Natalie. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be finishing off now. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much.
Okay, so I'm sure you'll all agree that, again, another fascinating afternoon of great work health and safety information, and certainly updated us all in terms of the new online platforms that are available. So quickly going through, we had Michael this morning from Tasmanian fruit industry give us a good insight to their new induction and the fascinating fact that it is provided in, 21 different languages, was it? 14. Got that one wrong. Rob, of course, from the TCCI and the Head for Work program. Thank you very much, Rob. Claire from Primary Employers Tasmania and their new online induction platform. Lots of information there with a hope that AgCard might go viral one day and be mandatory. And of course, Paul and Natalie to finish off at the People at Work. And of course, our own very new Better Work Tasmania learning modules, work health and safety, for the general one, and also hospitality and retail soon to be available. So Thank you very much for participating today and coming along to the 30th networking session. I'm sure you'll all be informed about upcoming events. We have, of course, in July, our WorkSafe conference coming about. You would have seen our promotion of for the awards this year that will be taking place, and of course, as every year, we have our WorkSafe month events in October. So keep an eye out for all those things because we enjoy that you all participate, and we really enjoy getting that great work health and safety information to you all. If you haven't signed up for Better Work Tasmania, you can just go on to the WorkSafe Tasmania website, and all you have to do is provide your email address, and that will ensure that you get information about forthcoming events. So just before I go, any speakers I'd like just to get together for a group photo if that's possible. So Maddie might be able to take that. Safe drive home, everybody, and thank you very much again for joining us. And for all our online people, thank you also. Thank you.